Welcome back, Careblazers. I'm so excited to share this video with you today. It's a very special interview I did with Lauren Dykovitz. Lauren is the creator of the blog Life, Love, and Alzheimer's. She's also the author of a book called Learning to Weather the Storm, a story of life, love, and Alzheimer's. Her mom was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease when she was 25 years old and lived with the disease for 10 years. So in today's video, Lauren's going to share a bit about her story of having a mom with Alzheimer's disease and some of what she's learned after the fact since her mom has passed away earlier this year. I hope you will enjoy and get a lot out of this very special, raw, and honest interview with Lauren. Thank you.
Lauren, thank you so much for being with us today. I think my Careblazers are going to learn a lot from you and what you have to share about how you helped your dad care for your mom with Alzheimer's disease. Thank you so much for being here. So I've already introduced you, but can you tell us a little bit about yourself and who you cared for and how long that journey lasts?
Sure. My name is Lauren Dykovitz. I'm 35 years old now. However, I was 25 years old when my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. That was in July 2010, and she just recently passed away back in April of this year, 2020. She was diagnosed at 62, so it was considered early onset Alzheimer's disease, and she was 72 when she passed away. So I helped part-time take care of her along with my dad, who was her full-time caregiver, and she lived at home with him. And I helped out part-time kind of off and on during the 10 years that she lived with Alzheimer's.
Yeah, 10 years to care for somebody with dementia. That's a long time and definitely more than one person can handle, you know?
Yes, it was a long time. I know plenty of people who have done it for longer than that, and then I know some who have done it for less. So 10 years definitely felt like a long time.
Yeah, for sure. Now, because your mom had technically early onset dementia, sometimes that's hard to get diagnosed because sometimes people are thinking it could be all kinds of other things. Can you tell me what signs you or your father started to notice in the beginning that suggested something might be off here?
So it was really my sister and I who noticed. I have an older sister. She's 11 months older than me, so we're practically the same age. But we sort of started noticing things about, I would say, a year or so before she got officially diagnosed. And we would just sort of mention it to each other and talk to each other about it, and things kind of piled on. So what we noticed was definitely a short-term memory loss. My mom, she would have trouble remembering things that she just told you. If she told you a story, she would tell it again 5 minutes later. She would ask the same questions over and over again. And at the time, I wasn't sure if she just wasn't listening to me when I answered her questions, or if she just forgot that she asked the question. So over time, we realized that she was forgetting that she had just asked the same question or told the same story. And we also noticed that she was forgetting how to do things that she had done her whole life. She suddenly couldn't remember how to do it. One example was that she would always order unsweetened iced tea whenever we went out to restaurants or things like that. And she would always fix it the same way with like sweetener and some lemon. And she just totally forgot how to do that. So she would order the iced tea, but then she would either put sugar in it. One time she put salt in it, or she would just sit there and kind of stare at it like she wasn't sure what to do next.
Mhm.
She also had a lot of visual problems, which I had no idea at the time that that was associated with Alzheimer's, but she had trouble distinguishing 3D objects. So
Ah,
everything just sort of blended into her. And an example would be she would be standing in front of the kitchen counter and her glasses would be right there on the counter. And she would ask, "Where are my glasses?" And we would say, "Mom, they're right there in front of you." And she would sort of tap the counter next to the glasses and all around them, but couldn't quite put her hand on the glasses, and she couldn't see them because everything just looked flat to her. And she would reach for the door handle on the wrong side of the door, or she would reach for a light switch just above it or below it, but not on it. And so it was definitely obvious to us that she was having some problems with her vision, but it didn't quite make sense to us why she was having those problems. And also she had some personality changes. Like, she was always a very social person, like a social butterfly. She was the mom that would like talk to the cashier at the grocery store and like tell them everything about my life and my sister's life. And she just could talk and talk to anyone forever. And she kind of became a little bit more withdrawn. And we would be in a group of maybe just the family, my dad and my sister and our significant others, and she just wouldn't talk to anybody. I remember one time my husband and I were moving into a new apartment, and everyone was there helping out, and my mom just went and sat on the living room floor with her coat on, and she just was the mom that would have been like unpacking my stuff, you know, and she was just kind of sitting there. So she just didn't know how to interact with us anymore, and she didn't know how to join in on the conversations anymore. But then she would get upset with us that we were leaving her out. So just sort of all of those things combined was like a red flag to us that something wasn't quite right.
Now, during all of this, was your dad also noticing the changes or not really?
I don't know, to be honest, if he was or not, because he wouldn't admit it if he was. He was very much in denial, as was my mom. At the time, I would say we started noticing these changes when she was 60 or 61. So she would just say, you know, oh, I'm just getting older. It's just old age and I'm fine. And my dad would kind of say the same things. And anytime we brought it up to either one of them, they kind of made it like it wasn't any of our business and they were going to take care of it and handle it themselves. And so I'm not sure what, if anything, my dad noticed, but I think my mom knew that something was going on and she was scared and she didn't want to admit it and to go to the doctor and to like go down the road of sort of verifying what we all knew was probably going on.
So how did the diagnosis come about? Did your mom get an official diagnosis, or is this kind of, she didn't get the official diagnosis, but everybody knew what was going on?
She eventually got the official diagnosis. So my sister and I began encouraging them to go to the doctor. You at least have to go to your primary care doctor, let them know what's going on, and just see. Maybe it's nothing. Hopefully it's nothing.
Right. Yeah.
So they did at some point, my mom and dad did go to her doctor, but they didn't tell my sister and I about the appointment. They didn't let us know that they were going. They kind of left us out of everything until it was done. But her primary care doctor did send her to a neurologist, which they did not tell us about that appointment either. We weren't included in that. And then after that initial appointment, the doctor just diagnosed her with anxiety and put her on a prescription for Xanax. So my sister and I would go over to our parents' house to visit my mom, and she was always like falling asleep in the chair or like snoozing, or she was just out of it. So we said, this is not right. You're not just gonna like put her on medicine and put her in the corner somewhere and like tell her that she's fine. So we just kind of kept nagging and and we said, there's no way that this is just anxiety. This doesn't make sense. So eventually she made another appointment with the same neurologist, and my sister and I went, because our fear was that, well, it's probably easy to misdiagnose her at her age because she's younger and there's no real family history of the disease. And we also didn't think that my mom and dad were being totally honest with the doctor about her symptoms. And if he had sort of the whole picture, then maybe it would be different.
Mm-hmm.
So my sister and I insisted on going to this second appointment where we kind of gave the whole story. And I just remember sitting in that office and I felt like I was ratting her out. Like I'm telling on my mom, because
Yeah.
it was pretty clear to us that the doctor didn't know what we were telling. Like my parents had not told him all of that information.
Oh, yeah.
And I could tell my mom was embarrassed and upset and like really nervous. But after we gave him sort of some more information and a bigger picture of what we noticed, he gave her some more memory tests. And then I believe she may have gone for an MRI or some sort of scan, but it was 10 years ago. So I don't remember exactly. And I wasn't included in it. So I wasn't there for all of that. But I just remember being at work one day and my mom called me and said that she heard from the doctor and that it's Alzheimer's. I have Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
So she did get that official diagnosis in July of 2010.
How did your mom and you interact with one another, or did you notice any difficulty or strain after that appointment? Because I imagine it was really uncomfortable for you to speak in front of your mom about everything you were noticing. And I imagine it was really hard for your mom to kind of hear everything you were saying that maybe your mom and dad were trying to kind of keep hidden for as long as possible. Did
I think it definitely put a strain on things because it was sort of like no one knew how to proceed after that. Because when you get a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, there's no plan. Like there's no treatment, there's no cure. You're not scheduling a surgery. You're not coming up. It's not going to happen overnight where things go from good to bad to worse. You know, it's a long-term thing. So no one really knew, like, well, what now? What do we do now? And it was hard for my sister and I to see our mom acting that way. And we would just kind of say, you're only 62. Like, you should be able to do this. What are you doing? And just kind of the being impatient with her and snapping. And it was because, you know, we had not yet accepted what was really happening.
Did the PCP or the neurologist or any of the clinics give your dad or anybody in your family support options, referrals, like anything to help with caregiving or what to expect down the road?
No, I mean, nothing at all that I remember.
Yeah.
If they gave any information to my dad, he didn't share it with us. And I just remember at the time, that was in 2010. So social media wasn't really what it is today. And there weren't really people out there sharing their story or sort of blogging about it or things like that. So I just remember the Alzheimer's Association website was the only thing. That was the only resource that I could find. That was the only information, you know, and I did a Google search on it and that was it. I didn't know anybody that had dealt with it before. No one in my family had ever had it. None of my friends had dealt with it. So it was a real lack of support and information. And I don't ever remember talking with her primary care doctor about anything at all. The neurologist was sort of, I wish she had gotten a second opinion with a different doctor because I don't think he knew what he was dealing with. Like he didn't really know how to talk to my mom. I don't really think he had the experience dealing with somebody my mom's age, but I don't remember getting any information or any resources or anything like that. And again, I was 25, so I was sort of like, has anyone my age ever been through this? Like I didn't even know because we were so much younger than most people.
Right. Now, what were some of the most challenging aspects of your mom having dementia, either just from like a caregiving perspective for you or your dad, or just kind of a coming to terms with what's changed and how things are different? Like, can you talk a little bit about some of the most challenging things for you and or your dad?
Sure. Well, I think definitely for my dad, it was this feeling of being tied to the house all the time because he wanted to keep my mom at home a nursing home or memory care. That was never an option. It was not even on the table. But at the same time, I think that really affected him, that he felt like he had no life and he was sort of a prisoner in his own home. And even later down the road, once we did hire care, there were many times where he could not be too far from the house because maybe there was a new caregiver at the house today, or there was something going on with my mom that he needed to be close by. And there were days where a caregiver would not show up, or the agency would say, we don't have somebody. And so my dad would be stuck at the house. So when I was caregiving for my mom, at that time, I lived just about 5 minutes away from my mom and dad. So I would come over all the time to help out. And if it was a last minute, if my dad said, I don't have help today, I don't have an aide today, I would have to go over there. And so that was really hard for me to feel like I had a life of my own, because I didn't really. And I always felt that it was so hard for me to continue living my life and enjoying my life when my parents were suffering so much. I felt like I didn't deserve to enjoy anything because my parents were in this situation and they couldn't enjoy anything. And the hardest thing emotionally is just, watching your loved one, especially your mom, the person who gave you life and raised you and has always been there for you, and she's not anymore. But she's here, but she's not. And you can't talk to her about things. You can't get advice. You can't share stories with her and just talk to her about normal things that you would talk to your mom about. And at the same time, you're helping her use the bathroom and you're helping her get dressed and you're cutting her sandwiches into 4 squares so that she can eat it. And a lot of people say that it's like a role reversal where you become the parent. And I understand that perspective and I get that, but it's not the same, because when you're raising a child, you expect these things and these milestones and it brings joy. But going in reverse, you're just losing bits and pieces of this person every single day. And you don't even have time to grieve it or process it because you're in fight or flight. What's next? What's the decision that needs to be made? And so there's just a lot of grief, a lot of loss, a lot of trying to still cherish your time with your mom, but also grieving that she's slipping away from you. And for myself personally, trying to establish my own life and build my own life because I was a young adult at the time. And so there's just kind of a lot of mixed emotions and a lot of complicated grief. And I would say that is definitely, that to me was harder than any physical aspect of caregiving.
What helped you? Like, where did you turn to for support or for help or for, like, because when you're talking, it's like I almost want to cry. Like, it's so hard to just imagine being in that situation for so long. Um, what was helpful to you through that journey?
I mean, it was hard. I cried all the time and I didn't know who to turn to or where to turn to. Um, so for the first 3 years, probably, I didn't talk about it. Nobody knew from me that my mom had Alzheimer's.
Wow.
I would say maybe like a day or two after the diagnosis, I called my best friend and told her, and she was like, oh yeah, my grandmother had that. And I was like, okay, but it's not really the same because this is my mom. She raised me. And it was just like, she doesn't get it. She doesn't understand. And how could she? She's never been through it. So I pretty quickly decided that I was just going to shut it down and keep it all to myself because I didn't feel like anyone would ever relate to what I was going through. So there were many, many friends that I did not tell about. We have mutual friends, my sister and I, that she told, but I never told them and I never talked to them about it. I didn't tell any of my coworkers. I just I just kept it all like bottled in. And I mean, the only person who really knew was my fiance at the time, now my husband. And we had just gotten engaged the same month that
Mm.
my mom was diagnosed. So I was kind of in this whirlwind of trying to plan my wedding without my mom's help, trying to take care of my mom and do my job. And my husband and I, like, were looking for houses. So there was a lot going on. And I just kind of like kept it all bottled up. After, I think, about 3 years after her diagnosis, I joined the Run to Remember team for the Alzheimer's Association to run the Delaware Marathon as a
Oh,
relay team.
cool.
So
Yeah.
I made a team and we had to fundraise. So I thought, well, how am I going to raise money if nobody even knows that my mom has this disease? So I posted it on Facebook. It was the very first time that I ever sort of like publicly said anything
Hmm.
about it. And I just received so much support from people that I had no idea had been through it.
Oh,
Most of
wow.
them, they were older than me, but they still had a parent who had it, um, friends or coworkers, and just people being very supportive and really um, praising me for sort of sharing my story. So it kind of took off from there, and I kept sharing things about it. And I eventually decided to start my blog, Life, Love, and Alzheimer's. And at that time, I did join a few support groups on Facebook. I never, ever, not once went to an in person support group because I felt like I'm going to be the youngest person there by like 30 years. And I
Mm.
just don't feel like that's going to be helpful. But Facebook support groups, through them, I was able to find people my age that had gone through it. So I connected with a few of them and I began sharing my story on my blog. And I would share my blog articles in these support groups. And I started to build my own community through that. And
Hmm.
that was really what helped me, was writing about it, sharing my story, and connecting with other caregivers who had been through it or were going through it. And that's the greatest resource there is. Other
Wow.
caregivers.
Yeah. So, in the beginning, it was kind of keeping it all to yourself because, like, your first attempt at telling somebody didn't really offer you a lot of support. It was almost like, oh, yeah, my family had that too, kind of thing. But then once you eventually did open up, it was like cathartic and healing for you. Not only like sharing it, but like it sounds like the act of writing.
Yes, the writing is huge for me because that's my therapy.
Yeah.
When I sit down and write all of the thoughts and feelings that I have, and I can sort of work through it by writing it down and going a step farther and sharing it with other people who say, me
Hmm.
too. I've
Yeah.
been through that. I went through the same thing. Thank you for putting it into words. And I've sort of always been a writer who didn't know what I was writing about, and now
Yeah.
suddenly I had something to write about. And
Yeah.
so it just made a lot of sense to me to continue to share my story. And it was helpful to me to be able to work my way through it by writing about it. And it
Yeah.
also connected me with this whole world of people that I would have
Yeah.
never known existed.
That's the great thing I feel about online space and online groups. While some people prefer in person, and that's great, the online, you get to find people maybe that you connect more with that are in similar situations, but also that doesn't require a lot of time in the traveling and being able to, for people who are primary caregivers, like arrange for care for their loved one. It's just kind of at your fingertips. It's been um, a really nice thing about the online space to do that. Now, did you have any um, concerns or pushback from other family members about sharing things so personal about your mom? Because I know some Careblazers are kind of hesitant or scared maybe to open up and share some of their stories for fear of what other family members might be comfortable with.
Yes, but none that really told me to my face that they
Okay.
had a problem with it. But I sort of heard or could just tell that they weren't
Hmm.
that supportive. it's so weird because when I first started out, it was like only my friends and family that were following me. They were
Yeah.
the only people that were reading my blog. You know, there was like 5 family members that would read everything that I wrote and comment on it and share it. And then as it went on, it's like they're stranger. It's all
Yeah.
strangers except for my friends that I've met through my blog, who I now consider my friends. They're like my online friends, but people that I know in real life like don't really read it anymore.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm not really sure when that fell off. And I think it may have been when, you know, it's one thing for me to post like a cute picture of me and my mom getting our hair done together. And I'm like, oh, I had a great day with my mom. It's another thing for me to talk about how she got poop everywhere and I had to clean it up or
Right.
things like that.
Right.
And I have always been very clear that I'm not just going to share the highlight reel of this
Yeah.
disease because that's not the truth. That's not reality. That's not what it's really like. And I have gotten pushback from some people who don't think I should share pictures. That's like a big,
Mm.
like, if you want to talk about what happened and tell the thing, but don't share the picture of your mom, do you think she would really want you to share a picture of her looking that way and this sort of thing?
Mm-hmm.
If I don't share things like that and nobody shares things like that, then we're all going to be sitting in our homes thinking that we're the only ones going through it.
Yes. Yeah. There are a lot of people who feel that way. Like, other people don't understand they're not going through it. Before, like, finding their community online, they felt like they were alone. So
Yeah.
there is a lot of healing. And I think that's like, we'll talk more about your blog and where people can follow you later. But I think that's part of the reason why it's become so successful is that people could see themselves in there. And I think a lot about what you're talking about just really highlights how every journey is so different.
Yeah.
Not everybody has the same experience. It might not always be the same type of family member you're caring for. You might be, the primary caregiver. You might get a diagnosis right away. You might not have problems. Like, it's just so different for everybody. But I think the thread that goes through all of them is that it's difficult. It's like a loss in whatever way that it is for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for doing what you're doing. Did you find that you had support from your dad with this?
Yeah, I mean, he's not on social media, and
Yeah.
I don't think he reads my blog or anything like that, but he tells everyone about my book, and he has like
Oh.
a copy of it. And he's like,
Uh-huh.
well, every time we would have a new caregiver come to the house, he would pull out my book and show it to
Oh,
them
I love it. That's
and tell
great.
them, oh, look, my daughter wrote this book. And so for such a long time, I felt like he didn't support me or didn't care or
Mm-hmm.
wasn't, but I think he just was. He just couldn't talk about it. You
Yeah.
know, he was
Yeah.
very much in denial for a very long time, and it was
Mm-hmm.
very hard for him to talk about any of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So I definitely think he supported it, and he's so proud of me and my book and what the community that I've grown and everything that I do
Mm-hmm.
and sharing my story. But he just recently started being able to tell me that.
Yeah. I mean, everybody grieves so differently, and your mom passed not that long ago. Can you talk to me about how that, like, next chapter, how that's been for you and your dad? Like, all of a sudden, 10 years, I imagine so much of your life is around your mom, making sure she has care, making sure somebody can be there for her. And now all of a sudden, that's not the case.
Yeah, my dad has like a gaping hole in his life right now, and
Mm.
a lot of it is they were married for 52 years,
Wow.
so they're high school sweethearts. So obviously, there's a lot of grief in the physical loss of my mom and this person, his wife, and this isn't what he expected his life to be like, and she's gone and he misses her. But there's also just sort of a lot of time now when
Mm-hmm.
before there wasn't. Every day, toward the end, like 3 years ago, we hired outside help to come into the home and to help care for my mom. So every day there would be somebody coming to the house. There would be a caregiver showing up most days, and they would be there for hours. And then really later on, like in the last few months, we had someone, second caregiver coming at night to be there. And there were people, myself and my sister and some other family members coming to visit my mom all the time. Uh, our family hairdresser was coming on. I mean, there was always
Oh,
somebody there.
yeah.
And so for that to all be gone, now it's just like my dad in this quiet house surrounded by these memories and just a lot of time and not sure how to fill it. So that has been really hard for my dad. And for me, it is just sort of like it's a gaping hole in a way that, I sort of put my life on hold the whole time my mom was sick. And I felt like I can't really do anything or move forward because I'm basically waiting for my mom to die.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it sounds really harsh to put it that way, but to me,
No.
that's how it was for me. I'm waiting for her to die. And I don't know when that's going to happen or how that's going to happen or what life is going to look like when that happens. But
Mm-hmm.
they say it's like a fight, flight, or freeze. And I
Mm-hmm.
froze.
Yeah.
I froze my life. I didn't do anything. And so now that she's gone, I feel her telling me, like, Lauren, you need to like get your life back together. You need to like
Mm-hmm.
do things for you, live your life for you, do what you want to do, all the things that I've always wanted to do. And so I've kind of been in this big like self-discovery phase where I'm
Yeah.
questioning like who am I and what do I want to do? What do I want to be? Like what is life now? My mom's
Mm-hmm.
gone. Like what does this even mean? Like what's the purpose? And so that
Mm-hmm.
has been kind of the biggest thing for me. And just going back over all of the losses over the 10 years that I now finally have time to grieve
Yeah.
and to sort of play it back in my mind and think about how we went from this to this to this and then to her being gone. And it's like
Mm.
now I have time to sort of think about all of that.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of grief. It's been harder than I thought it was going to be because when your loved one has Alzheimer's and you see the loss and how they go from being this vibrant person to being a shell of a person who is just laying in a bed dying for 3 months, not
Mm-hmm.
eating or drinking or anything. I mean, to see that is traumatic and very upsetting, and it's very difficult to witness that. And there's a lot of grief associated
Yeah.
with that. So there's a
Yeah.
lot to process and go through.
Yeah, and I appreciate your honesty and how real you're talking when you're saying, I'm basically just waiting for her to die. Like, I think a lot of people would be hesitant to be so open about that, but there is no doubt or question on your love for your mom. And I think a lot of people can resonate with what you're saying and maybe just haven't given themselves permission to be open and
Yeah, I
honest.
mean,
Yeah.
with this disease, there's no recovery. You're not
Yeah.
going to get better. You're not going to
Hmm.
suddenly wake up with their memories back and they're like,
Right.
my mom's going for a jog around, no, like she lost the ability to walk. It's gone. She's not walking anymore. She loses the ability to feed herself, to take care of herself, to everything that you're losing. It's gone. It's not coming back.
Did you ever get wrapped up into looking for, like, maybe there is something out there? There's a lot of people who I think are still kind of grasping onto, well, maybe it's turmeric or coconut oil, or maybe it's this, they're like really grasping at anything um, to see what can improve the situation.
I personally didn't do any of that because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I just didn't. I did kind of accept it for what it is, that there's no
Yeah.
treatment or there's no cure. And, my mom had breast cancer when she was 49. She got surgery, she had chemo, she had radiation. It went away. In 5 years, she was considered cured. There's nothing like that with this
Yeah.
disease.
Right.
You cannot change for right now, as it
Right.
stands, you can't change the outcome of this disease. And
Mm-hmm.
it is what it is. And I think what I learned eventually at some point was that I can't change the outcome, but I can change the journey and I can
Yes.
change the quality of her life while she's living with this disease.
Yeah.
And that's what I care about, is making her
Yeah.
happy and just surrounding her with love and joy and trying to create positive memories and moments for herself and for me. And
Yeah.
it was really hard. Like I said, you're watching all of this loss, and this person is changing so much in front of you that there were so many times where I felt like I just wish that she would die so that we could just be done with this. And it's the most awful, heartbreaking thing to think about your mom or anyone that you love. But I just felt like her death is going to be a relief for all of
Mm,
us. It's going to be
yeah.
a relief for her.
Yeah.
She's not going to suffer anymore. I don't have to watch her suffer anymore. I don't have to watch my dad go through this and suffer anymore. And my sister, who started having babies, and my mom's
Mm,
not a part of that. And you just you just think that that's the only escape from this suffering is death,
yeah.
and there's no other way out of it. But at the same time, what that means, that your loved one is going to die. And
Yeah.
so I would get comments and things on my social media about coconut oil and things like this. Feed her blueberries. Or one birthday, I posted a picture of my mom eating a piece of cake, and somebody said she shouldn't have sugar. And I
Oh
said,
no.
she's going to have sugar. She's going to eat cake and ice cream and chocolate and whatever she wants to eat.
Right.
Because as long as she's happy, that's all I care about. Not giving her a piece of cake is not going to cure this disease. At some
Yeah.
point, it may help. A healthy lifestyle can
Yes.
kind of push it off and prevent it. But
Right.
at the point that my mom was in,
Right. That's exactly it. Hmm.
right, I could bathe her in coconut oil, every day, and feed her blueberries and the world's healthiest diet. It's not going to reverse what's happening to her. And so rather than spend my time focusing on that, I spent my time focusing on, well, how can I just make her happy? What can I
Right.
do to make her happy, to give her
Yeah.
some joy in her life?
That's beautiful. Yeah. So having gone through it, right? Like 10 years of caring for your mom with Alzheimer's disease, looking back, what do you think? I'm kind of asking you this question, being able to offer some support for the current Careblazers in this situation. Like, looking back, what advice or recommendation or um, what do you think would have been most helpful? Would you recommend people in your situation, like in that situation now, do?
Well, I think the big thing is that you have to talk about it, because I didn't do myself any favors by not talking about it. I would be like
Hmm.
crying on a pile of dirty laundry, every other day, and
Okay.
canceled plans with friends all the time. I totally isolated myself. I did everything that you shouldn't do. You have to keep
Mm,
a piece of your life for yourself, whether that's your friends, whether it's running or a workout class that you like to take, or some creative outlet that you have. You have to keep that. You have to keep doing that for yourself, because you need it. You need to talk about what you're going through. Hopefully you have a friend that, maybe if they don't understand what you're going through, hopefully they'll just sit with you and listen. I always tell
yeah.
people, I'm not looking for you to fix this. I tell my husband that all the time. I'm not looking for you to fix this. You can't fix it. I just need to be heard
Mm,
and validated.
yeah.
And it's hard to find people in person that know what you're going through, but that's why I do suggest the online
Yeah.
communities that you can find.
Yeah.
There are the support groups, there are pages like mine and yours, where
Mm,
people can find community in the comments section.
right.
And it doesn't matter. I have people all over the world that follow my blog, that read my stuff, that comment. There's always going to be somebody awake and somebody that's up if you need to talk
Yeah.
or vent or say something. And I think that it's very hard to talk about, but the more that you do, the easier it is to talk about. And you'll find somebody that you can connect to, that you can relate to, that gets it. And
Yeah.
that's like one of the most important things. The other big thing, I've been like talking about it a lot, is gratitude. You have to
Yes.
find gratitude. And so I really recommend a gratitude practice for
Hmm.
people to journal 3 things every day that you're grateful for. I just recently started doing that myself in my like general life. But before I did that in relation to my mom's Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the one story I tell all the time is that when I was living far away from my parents, all that we had was FaceTime. And I would go a couple of months, 2, 3, sometimes 4 months without coming home to visit my parents. And my mom couldn't talk on the phone anymore. So many people are going through that exact situation right now with COVID still, not being
Mm-hmm.
able to visit people. And that's what it was. I couldn't go visit her. I couldn't call her. She couldn't talk on the phone. So my dad would facilitate these FaceTime calls. And I dreaded it so much. And I would get off from the call and I would cry and I would just feel like it ruined my day. It was so hard. I was so sad. So I started just making a gratitude list after every call. I would come up
Mm-hmm.
with, if there was one thing that I could write down that I was grateful for during that call, and one thing turned to 5, 6, 7, 10 things, and I would have these long lists on my phone. I just typed them into my phone. And then I found that I was looking forward to our FaceTime calls because I was looking for all the good. Oh my God,
Yes.
she smiled when I said that. She laughed. She sang along to this song. She
Yeah.
clapped, or, things like that. And then I began sharing those on my social media pages. And I found that sharing my gratitude just magnified it. And it made me feel good. It made other people feel good. And so I know that it sucks. Believe me, I know how hard this is and I know how much it sucks. And I am not one for toxic positivity whatsoever. But gratitude is real and
Yes.
you have to practice it to make it work for you, but it will work for you and you
Yeah.
will start focusing on the good things and just
Yeah.
those like little nuggets of joy and those little nuggets of good will get you through all the bad stuff.
Right. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I'm a huge proponent of gratitude. There's so much research out there that has proven it's helpful. And I think it's important, especially since we're in November and it's often a month of thanks. Expressing gratitude or appreciation for something does not mean you're discounting or ignoring all the challenges. It does not mean there are not hardships, but our brains don't need any help noticing all the negativity and all the difficulties, but our brains do need a lot of help noticing the things that are going okay. And when you practice this, your mood gets better, your sleep gets better, your health gets better, relationships get better. If there was any one thing, like I always say, if there was a pill that could promise you the effects that a regular gratitude practice could promise, everybody would be taking it. But it seems so simple, people don't want to do it. But yeah, I love gratitude is so helpful. And I like also, that you talked about, you mentioned things like running and doing things for you. If you could touch base briefly, because I think a lot of Careblazers struggle with this, is how do you balance your own needs and doing what you know is good for you, healthy for you, something you want to do with any sort of guilt that might come up?
Yeah. And I'm not great about that because, like I said, I put my whole life on hold because I was not a full time caregiver. I did not live with my mom, but I may as well have
Yeah.
because I put my entire life on hold to be available if I was needed, or just to be almost like I was punishing myself because my mom and dad can't enjoy anything, so I shouldn't. Like, I
Yeah.
feel so guilty going out to dinner with my husband
Mm.
because my mom and dad can't go out to dinner anymore. But that did not change anything.
Right. I was gonna say, like, looking back at that now with like having gone through the process, do you like would you change anything about that? Like, would you encourage other people to try to change that if they find themselves in that situation now?
I would, and I get it. I know it's hard. It's so much easier said now that I'm through it.
Yeah.
But I still have to do it now with my grief and just with my dad because
Hmm.
I want to be there for my dad all the time to help him through this difficult time. But I know how hard it is when you're in the thick of it and you have the feelings of guilt and I don't deserve this because my mom or my dad or my husband, my wife is suffering. I don't deserve
Right.
anything fun. But if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of your loved one.
Right.
And you can punish yourself and you can deprive yourself of all of life's joy, but it's not going to change anything.
Right. There's no amount of punishment or deprivation or guilt that's going to reverse this disease or change it or make it any easier on your mom.
No.
Right.
And I did that. I isolated myself. I never went out with friends. I never wanted to go. I was supposed to go on a cruise and do a speaking engagement, and I canceled it because I was afraid that something would happen to my mom while I was away. And I didn't do anything. I never even went back to a full-time job because I wanted to be around. I wanted to be available. I never really put as much work into my writing and everything that I'm doing now because I was just available for my parents all the time. And I just felt like I didn't deserve a life. I didn't deserve, but my mom still died from Alzheimer's disease. She still spent 3 months in a bed, didn't eat, didn't drink, and wasted away to nothing. And she still died. And nothing that I did to myself changed any of that. None of it did. And my husband and I moved back. We had been living far away from our family. We moved back at Christmas last year. 3 weeks later, my mom started dying. And 2.5 months after that, she died. My mom died the morning after I moved into a new house. And to me, that was her saying, go now.
Yeah.
Like, this is your new chapter. It's time for you. You need to go live your life now. And it
Mm-hmm.
was like her permission. She would have given me that permission a long time ago.
Right. Yeah.
Your loved ones want you to thrive and live your
Yes.
life.
Yes.
And it's something that I can see so much clearer now that I'm on the other side, because I'm like, it's so short. Life is so short. What if I get Alzheimer's in 30 years?
Mm-hmm.
And what would I do differently now? And why am I
Yeah.
not doing it differently now in case
Right.
that happens or something
Right.
else happens? And you have to enjoy the loved ones that you still have and enjoy the life that you still have.
Yes.
In It's not even in spite of your loved one's disease, but because of it.
Yeah.
Because my mom did not know her life was going to end up this way. My dad didn't know it was going to end up this way. So you really do have to try. I know how hard it is, but you really do have to try to keep something for yourself,
Yeah.
because you'll have a much easier time finding yourself when this is all over. Like, I've completely lost myself to my mom's disease.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've really been working on since she passed, is just trying to like find myself or create myself and become
Yes.
who I was always meant to be, but I sort of got lost along the way. So if there's
Yeah.
anything that you can do to prevent that from happening in the first place, just keep a small piece of something for yourself, something that
Yeah.
you do just because you like to do it, you enjoy doing it.
Oh, I love it. And I'm like, your mom is going to be with you every step of the way as you start to find this new path and start to live your life the way that you want. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel her with me all the time. The signs, like they always say to look for the signs, and I just feel loved,
That's
and that
wonderful.
that feeling that's my mom. That's everything
Mm.
that she taught me is with me.
Well, I'm so grateful when we're talking about gratitude that you've come on today to kind of share your story with Careblazers. And I think Careblazers are going to take a lot away just in terms of like hearing how you put your whole life on hold. I hope that they learn from some of the lessons you've shared and maybe they'll be able to, keep something for themselves. Where can Careblazers go to learn more about you, to follow you? And you have a book, and I want you to share a little bit about that and how long it's been available, where they can find it, all the good details.
Yeah, so my blog is lifeloveandalzheimers.com, and that is also my Facebook and Instagram names, Life, Love, and Alzheimer's on Facebook and Instagram. And then my book I have right here is called Learning to Weather the Storm, a story of life, love, and Alzheimer's. So this book is basically the first half of my story. Shortly after I started writing my blog and sharing it with people, everyone kept telling me that I should write a book. And I was kind of at a time where I was not living close to my parents, so I wasn't in the caregiving role and I had time. So I started writing it. And at that point, we were 5 years in. So at the time, I didn't know that that would be like the halfway point. I didn't know how long my mom was going to live. So I just sort of started writing until I had like enough. And it ended up being like the first half of my story. So I share everything in the book about the signs and symptoms that we first noticed, the diagnosis, the process with that, planning my wedding without my mom's help, a situation I had at work where we lost a coworker, quitting my full-time job to becoming a part-time caregiver to moving away from my family and then moving back. And I share everything in there and a lot of the lessons that I learned along the whole way. So I published it in 2017 on Amazon. And I plan on, I keep saying this, but I swear I'm going to do it. I'm writing the next one.
All
So
right.
yeah, I need to get started, but I am definitely going to write the second book and kind of conclude the story to really tell the full picture now that my mom has passed, and even in the afterlife,
Yes.
and
Right.
what I've learned through all of that.
Yes, that's wonderful. I'm going to be sure to link to your Facebook and Instagram and your book in the description below this video. So, Careblazers, you could go learn more about Lauren and her story and get her book at the description below. Lauren, is there any last words you want to leave for Careblazers watching?
I would just say that I get it. I know how hard this is. If there's nobody else in your life that understands, like I do, and I understand everything about it and the grief and how hard it all is. So the advice that I'm trying to give is coming from a place of knowing and that I've been through it myself. And so if there's anything that you can do to just keep a piece of yourself, find your gratitude, try to just cherish and enjoy what time you do have left with your loved one, because it will always come as a shock when they're gone. You never really expect it. So you have to live in today and you have to live in now and make the most of it before it's too late. And sharing your story and connecting with other people who have been through it or who are going through it is the best thing that you can do to help yourself and to help each other. And we build this community of people who get it, and your online friends become, real life friends who are your support system. And that's how you'll get through this, and you will get through this. I know it doesn't seem like it when you're in the middle of it and you don't know how you're going to get through it, but you are going to get through it. So I hope that helps. And I hope some of my blog articles and social media posts and all of that stuff can be helpful to anyone that's going through it right now.
I'm sure it will be. Thank you so much for spending your day with us and sharing your story.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye.
Bye.